I'm Jonathan Fuchs. I'm the COO of the Kidder Street Consulting Group, but more importantly, I'm a board member of the Patientory Association. And we're very pleased to present this webinar today on blockchain for COVID-19, focusing on contact tracing. We'll have about 45 minutes of presentation, and there'll be some time left over for Q&A. So if you do have questions, please put them into the chat at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So let me first start off and say and introduce to you our speakers for today. We have Krista McFarland, who is the founder and CEO of Patientory and the president of the Patientory Association, and one of the significant thought leaders in blockchain in actually the international circuit. We also have Alonzo Sexton. Dr. Sexton is a orthopedic surgeon, but he believes that information is the new asset class and healthcare organizations are uniquely situated to manage through technologies. His experiences utilizing multiple EMR systems and various healthcare applications qualify to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of many project types, and particularly in today's environment on contact tracing. We also have Sushant Kulkarni, who is our third speaker, who will be talking about a technological situation. He is the director of technology at Nitor InfoTech, and as a blockchain evangelist, has architected and built blockchain platforms. And we're very pleased to have him as a speaker as well. And Krista, could you go to the next slide, please? Oh, and also we have CK Parker, who is the regional vice president of Nitor and InfoTech. The next slide, please. As an added bonus for participating in this webinar, we're offering this interesting webinar offer, a consultation for contact tracing on the Bitcoin Matrix blockchain network, a free consultation for Patientory Inc. of the NAIF Enterprise Population Health Management Software, and a beta invitation for the Patientory Inc. consumer app. Krista will talk about this more later at the end of the presentation. So Krista, I'm going to hand it off to you to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Jonathan, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Patientory Association quarterly webinar series. As Jonathan mentioned, today's webinar will be focusing on blockchain for COVID-19 contact tracing with our association partners, Nitor. I'm Krista McFarland, the president of the board of the Patientory Association. The Patientory Association was incorporated as a global nonprofit healthcare member organization in order to meet the need and facilitation of the adoption of emerging technologies in the healthcare industry. We provide educational content and events, most commonly our Block Health Summit, which launched in 2018 and now partners with the Dubai City's Smart Government in an annual conference on promoting the advancement of blockchain in healthcare. Currently, the association connects healthcare industry adopters of the P2A network, P2A Matrix blockchain. The P2A Matrix blockchain securely stores and manages health information in real time, and such storage and management is facilitated by the blockchain-based token called P2A, the world's first healthcare cryptocurrency. The goal of today's webinar will give a deep dive into the different use cases of blockchain in healthcare for contact tracing implementation and provide an example of how our founding member, Patientory Inc., is currently using this technology in its mobile app. I'll also hand it over to CK, our partner with Nitor, who will talk more about Nitor.
Thank you, Krista. Good morning, good afternoon to wherever you are. My name is Chandrakiran Parker. I go by CK. I'm the regional VP of Nitor. Nitor is a software development company with main focus on product engineering. We put offerings into 4 main buckets, with data at the core of the expertise, cloud engineering, where we are talking about AWS, Azure. We are partners with both, as well as the DevOps, microservices, etc., part and parcel of this service. The third one, we put it under the umbrella of IoT and mobility. And the fourth one is in blockchain. We are the few companies in the world who have not only researched and implemented blockchain, we also monetize that for our customers. Today's topic in blockchain, I got Sushant, who is the solution head and a technical architect as well for this solution. And he will be presenting the technical part of how we are using blockchain for contact tracing. Krista, back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
just to provide definitions here, and I'll hand it over to our Patient-Tory Association Ambassador, Alonso, who would be giving us an introductory and context into the use case for contact tracing and blockchain.
Great, thanks, Krissa. As an introduction to myself, as Jonathan mentioned, my name is Alonso Sexton. I am a practicing orthopedic surgeon, and you might wonder, well, what does he have to do with blockchain? And for me, about 4 years ago, my practice had a data breach in which, through a third party, hackers were able to access over 400,000 records. And going through that process, it became very clear to me that the current way in which we manage information and data in healthcare has some severe limitations and significant liabilities. And at that time, I actually started getting interested in decentralized modes of data management and came across this weird space called blockchain and Bitcoin. And for the last 3 years, I've had the opportunity to give several lectures as I've sort of learned more and more about this technology. And we have sort of a screen here of definitions, which I think are important. However, the understanding about what blockchain is very difficult to explain, that I've been doing for the last few years. And as a physician, that's really part of my job, is to describe to patients difficult and complicated surgical procedures and diagnoses. But I found that describing this new and sort of innovative technology is probably really one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And a big part of the reason for that is because what this technology challenges us with is fundamentally changing our understanding of how we think about how society are organized. And so we can, at this point, I'd like to just give some background into why this technology is important in this current context of COVID-19 and the pandemic, and how it may play a role specifically for contact tracing, but there are also additional realms in which blockchain may play a role. And as I mentioned, the difficulty with understanding this is that we really have to think about, as we talk about this, how do we create trust bonds? And there's two ways of thinking about this. One is that, if you think about yourself as an individual or organization, there's really two models of trust that have evolved. The first model would be referred to as a local model, in which you trust people that you know, or trust friends or family. The obvious limitations with that type of model is that there's a scaling problem in regards to how many people can fit within in that circle. And due to this, the models that have evolved include what would be termed an institutional model, where instead of only trusting those people that you know intimately, you put trust and faith into certain institutions or centralized organizations, whether that be a bank or a government or a religion. Now, while normally you would think with placing increasing amounts of trust into a central organization, the main concern with that would be abuse of power, what we've seen through the COVID pandemic is that there's another scaling issue that also occurs with these institutional models of trust. As we've seen, various organizations and governments have difficulty managing the global problems that occur with a pandemic that can easily spread across the world as it spreads across a state or city. And so there's really been this failure of centralized organizations in the way that they've actually had to manage this potential problem. When we talk about COVID and our response to COVID, there are really 5 things in our toolbox that we have as ways of mitigating the spread of this disease. We'll specifically talk about contact tracing today, but the other tools include both antigen and antibody testing, social distancing, quarantine and isolation, and then therapies, treatments, as well as vaccines. In regards to contact tracing, the way that we sort of have to get a little bit of an understanding of how that happens now, essentially a positive test activates the contact tracing system, where once a positive test is obtained, that test is submitted to the contact tracing organization, whether that's a government or public health organization or a employer or organizations like a sports league, for example. Once that contact tracer has been activated, the positive test individual is then contacted by the contact tracing organization, and then through the process of essentially direct interviewing, those close contacts for that patient are identified. The contact tracing organization at that point then makes contact with those that are in that have been in close contact to let them know that they have a potential exposure and that they may need to isolate, quarantine, or test. Now, as we think about just the scale of this type of problem and some of the challenges that are associated with this, if we think about a individual that has to contact a positive test, for example, in my state, in Georgia, there's approximately 1,200 new positives per day. And if you make a slight assumption that each of those positive patients may have 5 contacts over a 24 or 48-hour period, you're talking about over 8,000 contacts per day that needs to be performed in order to do this in an effective way. So obviously there's inefficiencies associated with this. There's inaccuracy, reporting bias that may occur due to the individual not remembering who he was exposed to. There's a lack of a workforce to actually do this work. And then there's the increased cost. And as we think about these challenges, one of the natural inclinations would be to say, well, what kind of modern technologies, what kind of technology solutions could we put in place that would help to make this more accurate, make it more efficient, make it more cost effective? And unfortunately, with the introduction of these more modern techniques, come a whole other set of challenges and concerns, including privacy concerns, how to secure this information and make sure that the data is good quality information, and then the very real possibility of this introducing significant amounts of surveillance into this type of system. Next slide. And so this is where blockchain comes into play. And while I think that most people in their first introduction to blockchain would see it as a new form of money or a distributed ledger, what blockchains really enable is governance. And I think that's one of the things that's fundamentally misunderstood about this technology. It's not about money, but it's about a way to govern in a manner in which there is censorship resistance and decentralization. And it allows us to create this concept of a shared belief, meaning that you believe and I believe the same thing, or this term consensus. We're able to come to a consensus together, but in a way that is not centrally controlled and is able to be done in a way that is protected from security risks as well as privacy risks. And so after that background, I would like to hand it over to Sushant to talk more about some of the specific technology platforms that Patientory is working on with Nitor.
Thank you, Alonso. Thank you everyone for joining us today. So Alonso, thank you for having trust in a blockchain technology as being a medical professional. So which, definitely makes us proud and equally come to as a better technology platform. So we'll talk about how we are doing contact tracing using blockchain, but let's talk about the platform that we have built. The Nitor InfoTech and Patientory Association has built, which is capable enough to handle robust use cases. So we know that every individual, be it a patient or a consumer, they store their data with the facilities or the services that they use, right? And then they rely on that centralized system to provide access to their data. And then in a nutshell, the entire system is a centralized system. So be it your healthcare provider, the pharmacist, the laboratories. So they have their own systems, and then it is governed by some laws or regulated by some laws, but ultimately you end up storing your own data with some other organizations, and then they rely on some other technologies to take care of the data, just make sure that they are complying with it. So with Python Matrix blockchain, we are aimed to eliminate this centralized risk and make healthcare data available through every individual. So every individual user can be in a total control of their own data, but the other stakeholders are equally important. Being said that, so Python Matrix blockchain platform is offering everything to every stakeholder in the healthcare industry and beyond it. So you can join the Python Matrix blockchain platform as a member, and then you can choose to be a blockchain node host, just to participate in the consent. You can become a storage provider, or you can join as the enterprise, or you can join the developer community. So you might be an individual developer, entrepreneur, tech enterprise, or the ISV. So as I said, you can join that as a node host, and then you can participate in the consensus. You can provide your own storage space for to the network. And then if you're an enterprise, you can always utilize or take advantage of the applications which our developer community is building on top of this platform for the well-being and betterment of your employees and customers. So you can take advantage of variety of B2B applications, and then for developers, so they can build the DApps. They can monetize their distributed applications or decentralized applications which are built on top of this platform. And doing so, we have the ready-to-use testnet where they can opt into and then try out their use cases on top of this platform. Now, we'll talk about we talked about what the members can do, but now let's talk about the centralized or central core member of this entire network. So as a developer, if you build any DApp, so consumer-centric DApp, so the consumers can register on the platform using the distributed or decentralized application, and in return they will get the wallet address and then keys. And throughout their life cycle, they would be only known by their wallet addresses on the entire network. So they can use the facilities of other B2B distributed or decentralized application to provide the consents to the enterprises, to the developers, or to their employer organizations that the applications can utilize their data and then provide this information. So we are not just relying on the healthcare or the major stakeholders in the healthcare industry, the providers or the pharmas or the laboratories. So you can go beyond it, and then you can start storing your variables, wellness gadgets, even your insurance data, and then pharmacies, prescriptions, lab orders, everything on this network. So now you can see that how much power we are actually providing to an individual. And then that's how we see that contact tracing is become much more easier, because the user or the patient or the consumer is in a total control of their data. And then we'll look at how we are utilizing or how we are taking advantage of this the platform that we have built, and how we are making it very simpler, or how we are very easily implementing something like contact tracing using blockchain. So we call it the blockchain enabled disease tracker. So now we know that the COVID-19 is there, but you never know that there might be some outbreak worldwide. I hope that doesn't happen at all, but you never know. Or it could be another disease spreading in some specific geographical area. So we use consumer application to sync data from the healthcare provider, labs on the network. So we share the PHI data from the healthcare providers and lab results in disease tracking as a part of the self-assessment. So every individual can perform the regular self-assessment, and then if they are doing their test results or their tests outside the network, they can of course submit their test results. And then based on all of this data that we collect, we generate the outcome for them. And then this outcome we generate, we store it on a public, on the Pitometrics blockchain network, encrypted with their IDs. So they are only, it is only accessible to them. And then, they can decrypt that outcome using their own private key. And then we provide this platform where they can manage all the infectious diseases from a centralized place. Now we'll look at how we are providing the contact tracing use case on top of the assessment framework that we have built using blockchain. So they can choose to, every individual can choose to the anonymous outcome from the disease tracker with other individuals. So they can choose to publish it over the BLEs, or we can track it using geofencing if they enable that. But important point to note here that we never reveal the identity or the device information of an individual. So it is the data is always with them. So it is in an encrypted format, and when they choose to share this on the network, we just use their private key. Of course, they will own they own their private key, so we will use that private key, and then we will publish the outcome on this network. So it becomes quite easy. So let's look at some of these illustrations about how we are doing it. So we say that we gather the data from, or individual patients can collect the data from all of these different healthcare stakeholders. They when they want to store the data on the network, so they will decrypt the data, encrypt the data, and they will store it on the platform. And when they will receive the data on their device, so of course the keys and everything will reside with them. So once they receive the encrypted data on the devices, we will use the device keys to decrypt that. So now we will follow this chain for the contact tracing, or the disease, the infectious disease management. So whenever they are submitting any test results or self-assessments, or if we are receiving any data from the healthcare providers or laboratories, so we will take the existing data from the network. We will combine the current data that we have received with the existing data, and based on that we will calculate the outcome, and then we will store it back on the storage network, on the Pitometrics blockchain network, in the encrypted format. And if they are opting in for exchanging the data on the network, so we will exchange the anonymous outcome to the other devices in the network. So now we see this has a big potential where this can help people to return to the society. So it can be made a standard for hospitality, the travel, and then airlines, the hotels, and then it can help the employer organizations as well, if they want to make this as a standard for allowing every individual to the workplace. Yeah. So can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So they will have their outcome calculated on their device, but when we show that, so it is always in an encrypted format, but they can choose to decrypt that outcome, and then they can share that outcome with all the other stakeholders if they put on the Pitometrics blockchain platform in the member capacity. So we can see we can make it a standard for hospitality, and then for aviation, travel, and then we can make it also a mandate for something very essential like grocery and the hotel. And then we have seen that how efficient the system can be when we put an individual user in control of their own data on a decentralized network. So it opens up a lot of opportunities and the possibilities where people can join this community or this ecosystem, and they can build their applications or decentralized applications on the mobile, on the web, smart gadgets. So some of the use cases are we are trying out to build a telemedicine platform. Then there are possibilities to build something like the clinical trials, then all the applications in in the wellness can be, very much improvised if we have access to, the data from all these sources for an individual. And the Patientory Inc. is the pioneer member who is building the consumer application, taking advantage of this entire ecosystem. Yeah. So.
Thank you for that, Sushant, for that overview. I just want to remind everyone that as participation, the PTOI Matrix blockchain network is an open source network that can be utilized and integrated into multiple use cases, as pointed out by Sushant. As part of this webinar, we're happy, along with the Nitor team, to provide consultations for that. You can reach out at info@patientoryassociation.org or marketing@nitor.infotech. And then now in the agenda, we will open it up to questions and answers. And I will bring it back to Jonathan, who would be able to address some of your questions.
Sure. Krista, we have one question on the chat box, which is, will the deck be distributed following the presentation?
I believe we can do that, Jonathan. The recording will also be available on the Patientory Association website, patientoryassociation.org. That's where you can also find historical webinars that we have recorded in the past, along with the most recent webinar. We can do that.
Okay, well, that's the only formal question that we have from the chat box. Can someone talk about implementation activities in terms of what is the time frame for an implementation of this sort of enterprise?
I'll let Sushant go ahead and take that.
Thank you, Krishna. Thanks, Jonathan. So we generally see the major hurdle in the enterprise integration is access to a very much standardized data and access to a secure platform. So we have seen that if people has to implement something for specific for the healthcare industries, so there are various norms, and those differs based on the geography, and we will take the standard one, which is the HIPAA, right? And then most of the cloud providers are offering the HITRO certificates. But if you can see it here, the people can still own their data, but they don't have to follow the norms. So though we have taken care of, we don't breach any rules and regulations when we are storing this data, but people are in control of their own data, and then the data which is stored on network is very well securely encrypted using their own identities. Now, if somebody has to build a B2B or B2C use case, so they have to just join the Patientory Association as a member, and then they can climb up the ladder. So they can, if they are very much interested in contributing to the community, and as I mentioned in my slides, right? So they can participate in the consensus. So they can host the blockchain node. Beyond it, if they are willing to offer their own storage space for storing the healthcare data, of course, in an encrypted format, so they can provide that data, and in return, so whatever the consumption will be, so they will earn the PTOIs in the network in return of the consumption of their storage space. Beyond it, we see people have a lot of use cases on their mind, but as I said, there are a lot of rules and regulations which avoid them, taking that giant step or the next step and move towards building something good for the humanity. So they can take take advantage of the testnet that we have built. We have also published the client SDK, and they can integrate very much seamlessly in this network. And then we have seen that every single user who registers on this platform. So they can choose to give a consent to any enterprise or to any application which registers on the Petametrics blockchain platform. So there are potential users as well. So they don't have to stick for the user if they are coming up with the right use case. And last one is I want to address for the enterprises where they can take advantage of the B2B applications which are being offered on this platform to better for the betterment of their employees or their consumers. Hope that answers your question, Jonathan.
Thank you. Krista, can I ask you to display the contact emails that you had before for the consultation? There it is.
Yeah.
I've been asked to put that in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, another question that we had that came in, it's more of a technical one, and either CK or Sushant. So we've seen Apple and Google come out with their open source contact tracing app. Can you speak, or Alonso as well, can you speak more around the challenges of implementing this that we've seen since that came out? We saw a lot of governments internationally reject that form of contact tracing, and why would blockchain change this particular implementation of contact tracing?
Yeah, I'd like.
Sure, okay, so maybe I'll start, and Alonso, you can, sorry. Go ahead, Alonso.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would just make a couple of comments. I think that what you're seeing with the sort of Apples and Googles of the world sort of demonstrates what one of the ultimate problems is with contact tracing, and even I would say health passports. That concept as well is that, I would say make no doubt, make no mistake about it. Really, what you're talking about at this level is massive surveillance, which to a lot of people is a very concerning issue with putting that level of information in regards to, who have you been around the last 2 days in a organized database that is protected only by a trusted third party, which are these companies. And that's really why I think the blockchain solution makes more sense to people if they think about it in a more global fashion. Now, the question I would have is whether or not, because of the severity of this pandemic, whether or not people are willing to just sacrifice that privacy due to the desire to get back to normal, and whether or not a solution like a Google or Apple will be something that is just accepted just because people are so ready to get back to normal. But I think if you take a longer term perspective, I think people understand, and even governments understand, some of the real significant problems with having a solution that centralizes power and information to that degree. And so I think as people think through these solutions about, well, how do you monitor who someone has been around for the last 48 hours in a way that is going to provide some, something that society is comfortable with, I think that's where the mass adoption for a blockchain solution really starts to come through.
Great. We have two additional questions. One is from Bridget. Please provide details.
Sushant wanted to say something before we move forward.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to say, these guys have, Google and Apple have provided the specification for the exposure notifications. And then, internally these exposure notifications rely on an individual application who is determining the outcome or, the infectious label for an individual. And based on that, they are providing this feature for exposure notification where people can, developers can, send out the notification through one of these channels which is available there. But as Alonso mentioned, it depends on the app. If they are not revealing any specific information about the device or an individual user. So again, it makes, pretty much riskier and then, not much secure. And on the contrary, the PTOI matrix implementation, and as we said, we always send out the anonymous the notifications, and we can also send out the notifications over the exposure notifications. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
I think before we go to the next question,
Sure.
we had someone, Doug, one of our attendees, who I will allow to talk and add. I think he had something to add as well. Doug, are you going to ask your question or comment? All right, we will move on to the next question.
And so, as I said before, please provide details regarding phone-to-phone signature exchange when we're in close contact for a period of time, and how this leads to automated track and trace.
So to answer it, very briefly, so if we look at our implementation, so we consider the exposure as a part of the assessment and then outcome, and the data for the exposure with the rest of the wallet addresses on this network. So we strictly keep it on devices for an individual user, and we use it for the outcome determination.
Okay, and another question was how to mass adopt the COVID-19 contract tracing application PTOI matrix. Not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, just to rephrase it, I think this was submitted by an attendee as well, Constance Irwin. I think he's asking, how would a blockchain-enabled, contract tracing solution such as PTOI matrix be mass adopted? So and I can point to that, and Sushant, Alonso, feel free to chime in. But what was presented in the slides in the presentation, Sushant mentioned the essential adopters of the PTOI matrix and potential use cases. So those adopters can include developers, as well as government and enterprise organizations. To date, the matrix is hosted on Amazon, and in the next couple of weeks will be rolled out to Google Cloud as well. In that adoption, making it easy to integrate current app solutions is one strategy. But overall, as we mentioned, such as employer organizations, look at really monitoring, the employee health and back to work. We'll definitely see this type of technology solution start to take traction. And eventually, once individuals start to own their data or have that ownership of their data, which surpasses current, surveillance, which Alonso mentioned as well, we will see that adoption, that facilitated adoption. Anyone else want to add anything?
No, Chris, I think you summed up it very well.
There are no other questions that have come up that I see, Krissa. So.
All right. Well, this will. We have one more from Bridget.
Oh, wait, there's a question again. Are you able to speak to the business model? How is PatientTori paid? And as well, the patient, why don't you add to that, Krissa, the PatientTori Association?
So the PatientTori Association is a 501c6 member organization. The network, the PTOI matrix, is open source. It is free of use. It is a nonprofit organization. So membership fees to people that join the consortia and the network is expected, is based on an annual membership model in order to gain access to the network. which is a membership perk.
Okay.
Another question?
So I think that will give everybody another 50. Whoop. Are you paid to speak to your business? Oh, no. I think we got it. Oh, thank you was the answer to that. So we'll give everybody back another 15 minutes of their day. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Remember that there is this webinar offer. Should there be additional interest in this activity, I want to thank our speakers, Alonso, Sushant, and PK, as well as Krista and the Patient Tory Association for this opportunity. We will have another webinar in next month, I believe, and I want to thank everybody for their participation. And with that, have a great day. Thank you, everyone.